All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and you know we had to talk about it, man. You know we had to get to it. It's so much going on. We're talking about whether or not we're going to be buyers or sellers before the trade deadline. I'm still working on that video as well. We're talking about, should we trade Chase Young or Montez Sweat? We're going to truly try to dive into that with a lot of stats. But of course, most of y'all are here because an anonymous NFL team has reportedly offered the Commanders a trade for Montez Sweat, but none for Chase Young yet. Now, there are reports from Josina Anderson that multiple teams are calling about Chase Young and Montez Sweat, but the only official trade offer, and we don't know the parameters of it yet, has only been placed for Montez Sweat instead of Chase Young. So again, I have a lot of stats, a lot of advanced stats that we're going to dive into to see who's the better player, because one guy's leading surface stats, the other guy's killing the other guy in advanced stats. Which one should we prioritize? And then we also have a survey that we're going to take a look at. Shouts out to Grant Paulson. He did a survey on his Twitter and asked a lot of people who would they prefer to keep. If we had to pick one to keep and extend, who would it be? And you'd probably be surprised who the answer is, with almost 3,000 votes put in. Also, apparently there's a report that the Commanders haven't even talked to Montez Sweat or Chase Young about a possible extension for either guys. I hate that. So we got to talk about that and more, because it's just like, do we have a future plan? If we're not trying to trade them, and if we're not trying to extend them, are we literally just taking this day by day with no looking ahead to the future? So we got to dive into everything I just gave y'all previews for in this intro. But before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned, because again, I need to work on a lot of things. Like, again, I'm still working on the buyers or sellers video that will come out a little later. I still have my advanced stats video for everything that happened in that Giants game, and you'll be extremely surprised by a lot of those stats. Offensive line, Sam Howell; receivers, Eric Bieniemy; defense, a lot of bad, but also some very surprisingly good from a few guys. So yeah, man, we have a lot of and of course I still got to do the preview video for this upcoming game against the Eagles. So stay tuned, because I'm coming out with minimum a video a day leading up to this Eagles game. So stay tuned for all of that. And of course, I will be live streaming the entire Eagles game, all 4 quarters and all of that. So stay tuned for that. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it. Let's get it.
You tell your family you can be a commander.
All right, so like I said in the intro, according to Nikki Javala, who I trust a lot. I mean, there's a lot of different reporters out there that, you know, depends on what's going on, whether I trust them or not. But like Nikki Javala and John Comm are some of those guys that their main mission is not to be first. Their main mission, their primary objective is to be right. So when she says that one team has made a trade offer to the Commanders for defensive end Montez Sweat, but none so far have offered for defensive end Chase Young, I believe it. Also, she said unclear the terms of the offer for Sweat. I would love to hear that. If we could somehow get the leak on what was asked, like how much they were willing to give. The fact that the Commanders declined it, first of all, we got to know, we already know that's what happened. Otherwise, Montez Sweat will be gone if they accepted this said trade offer. So I would love to know what they offered, because then that will at least put a floor on what they're willing to take. Like, say, for example, if that team offered a 3rd or a 2nd round pick, that means the Commanders, as of today, things could change. We lose to the Eagles, maybe we go on a losing streak, lose to the Eagles, lose to the Patriots, lose to the Seahawks or something. Things could change. I hope that's not what happens. And then again, like, if we want a high draft pick, we would prefer that happens. But right now, I'm still in, man, this season is not over mode. I think we can finally find a way to turn around. Even though after you lose to the Bears and the Giants, who do you plan on beating on the rest of this schedule? You still got to play the Cowboys twice, the Eagles again, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, the Rams, the Dolphins, the 40. It's ugly. Seahawks, Patriots just beat the Bills convincingly. The same team that whooped us by a lot of points. So it's ugly, but I still I'm holding on to a thread of hope. But either way, things could change. But I would love to know what the trade offer was, because as of this week, I would love to know what the Commanders aren't willing to give up for him. Like, if it was like a 3rd, maybe it was something ridiculous like a 5th or a 6th, just something completely disrespectful. A team just trying to gauge how desperate we are to be sellers. Who knows? We have no idea so far. I'm just trying to put out all of the possibilities to provoke thoughts and debates and things like that. Just to get people thinking, like, what could have happened? Where are we at with this right now? But more reports come out that Jacina Anderson, I trust her as well, she said, quote, "Meanwhile, it is my understanding that there are several identifiable teams that have both interest in trading for either Commanders defensive ends Montez Sweat or Chase Young, and all said teams are willing to offer either a long-term deal ahead of free agency." So it's teams, I don't know if it's the same team that's like, I'll take Chase Young or Montez Sweat, or if it's some teams that want Chase Young or some teams that want Montez Sweat. But either way, it sounds like the majority of, if not all of the teams that have shown interest, again, there's only been one team that actually put in an official trade offer. I hope that leaks sometime, but there are other teams out there that are fighting. They're like, hey man, I will take one or the other, will take, but whatever. And we're willing to not only trade for them, but we got that contract ready for them. And as soon as this season ends, or even before the season ends, we're going to go ahead and extend those guys to long-term contracts because we believe in them as long-term defensive ends where we are. And hey, man, that's really interesting. Like this Montez Sweat, Chase Young trade market right now is heating up a little bit more than I expected. I thought teams were going to like not even try to outbid themselves. I thought it was only going to be like a couple of teams, and so the trade offers wouldn't go up. But if teams keep constantly trying to, see what's going on with Montez Sweat and Chase Young, eventually the Commanders are going to be like, well, such and such team just called and they offered this. What you going to do to outdo that? You know what I'm saying? Oh, okay. They just came with a counter offer. They're going to add more value to the potential trade or whatever, whether it's a pick, players or whatever. And then you're going to go back to the other team and be like, hey, man, I liked your initial offer at first, but then these other people said they're willing to give this. What you gonna do now? And then if it's multiple teams, it's like, this trade offer is just gonna keep going up and up and up. So maybe that makes it even more possible that we will end up trading one of them, because if it's a lot of teams outbidding each other, which could, maybe that's not happening. Maybe a lot of teams just called to see what was going on, and then the Commanders told them this is what we're willing to take, and maybe this is what you're offering, we're not willing to take that, and maybe nobody called back. Maybe it was just, let me feel for what the Commanders got going on. Maybe nobody's outbidding themselves. Again, I'm just trying to throw out there all of the potential possibilities of what could be going on behind the scenes right now. Who knows? But I'm really excited about this situation. Y'all know me, man. I'm Mr. Optimism. I'm just hoping, again, with the same thread I'm holding on to, for us to potentially somehow pull a rabbit out of the hat and make the playoffs this season. That same thread is hoping that Chase Young and Montez Sweat stays here long term, or if anything, maybe you sign one long term, you franchise. I don't even saying franchise tag feels like saying Voldemort, bro. You just don't say that, bro. That's an accursed word right now, man. That only just brings up bad juju. You say, so I don't even want to talk franchise tag. I don't know. Again, there's no logic to it. It's just pure hope on my end. I don't know what the Commanders are going to do on their end. But when you look at cap space, because my whole thing, like, okay, yeah, I know we have a lot of guys we got to pay. I know we're going to end up losing, like, technically at the end of the season, Antonio Gibson, Curtis Samuel, Kendall Fuller, most of the defensive ends against Montez Sweat, Chase Young. A lot of our top players are no longer on contract after the season, and a couple of the offensive linemen as well. But at the same time, we have like $92 million worth of cap space. If you really, for real, want to pay Chase Young and Montez Sweat, you can. Oh, don't forget Cameron Curl as well. Like, we have cap space. We do. We honestly do. And I mean, say you go offensive tackle in the first round, and you want to create more cap space by getting rid of somebody like Charles Leno, where you cut him and you'll take on $8 million worth of dead cap, but you'll save over $7 million. So we would have $100 million in cap space if you were to just go ahead and cut Charles Leno. I'm just giving you multiple options as to how we have the money to pay both if we really, really want to. If you're trying to really see what we're trying to do. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a scenario where, like, Ron Rivera and everybody is just full-blown embrace the sale, embrace the tank, embrace the rebuild. Ron Rivera's gone. Martin Mayhew's gone. A lot of the people in the front office, the coaching staff are gone. Maybe we keep Eric Bieniemy. You don't know, because with how this season's going so far, maybe he's not having the best audition for a head coaching job right now. But who knows? You never know what may happen by the end of the season. But if we just go in full embrace the rebuild mode and clean house, I wouldn't be surprised if we trade away guys like Kendall Fuller or Curtis Samuel before the season's up to get back whatever value you can before they just walk in free agency for free. You know what I'm saying? And then we end up with a lot of draft picks going into this very talented draft, and we have a lot of cap space going into this next season. Again, we should at minimum have $92 million worth of cap space before we even start to trade people away based on what we have so far, projection-wise. So things get really interesting. Also, shouts out my boy Mason Kinahan on Twitter. Make sure you follow him on Twitter and everything. Writes great articles and all of that, man. He was one of the main ones going to training camp and stuff, giving updates from there. So if you're not following him, you're missing out. But he brought up a great point as far as the Josina Anderson tweet that I read earlier, with multiple teams inquiring about Chase Young and Montez Sweat and being willing to give either of them long-term deals after they trade for him. They're not just going to trade for him just on a quick little one-year flyer. They're willing to trade for him and then pay them long-term and truly build around those players. He said, we knew this already, but this confirmation makes it like, let us know for sure that this is what's going on. When an insider of this caliber, Josina Anderson, this isn't Love John Com, Love, all of these guys, Nikki Javala, JP Finley, and all of these guys, but they're mostly Commanders reporters. When it's Josina Anderson, who's just at the top, neutral analyst, when she's reporting on something like this, then you know that there's serious interest. This is not just a couple of teams. We're probably talking somewhere maybe like around 8 or more. I'm just guessing, but again, shouts out to Mason Kinahan, because I agree with his point that if Josina Anderson, if this landed on her lap and she's talking about it, she's tweeting about it, it must be something really serious about this. Shouts out my boy Pedro Schmidt as well for pointing this out from an article, I think it's from the Washington Times or something like that. Make sure you subscribe to him on YouTube. Great videos. Make sure you follow him on Twitter, all of that too. He brought up a great point. If Ron Rivera trades Chase Young for a 5th round pick, I don't know what I'll do. I completely agree, because he has attached a snapshot from an article, I believe it's the Washington Times, breaking down everything that's going on with Chase Young and Montez Sweat. But this was back yesterday, so maybe it's not all the way updated, but we'll see. But either way, the article says one senior NFC personnel executive who spoke on the condition of anonymity to evaluate another team said the markets for Young and Sweat will be depressed because both are expiring deals and unlikely candidates for trade and signs, which completely contradicts what Josina Anderson said, which is crazy. He was especially skeptical a team would commit to Young now because of his inconsistency and injury history. He said Washington would probably receive offers for a 4th or a 5th round pick, a 3rd at absolute best. And that's why Pedro Smith brought up, there's no way we trade Chase Young for a 5th round pick. That's inexcusable. I mean, first of all, at worst, you allow Chase Young and Montez Sweat to walk if you don't trade him away. At worst, you get as a 3rd round pick, as a comp pick. So, I mean, I know it will take a whole entire year later. Like, we wouldn't be able to use that 3rd round comp pick that we get at worst. It could, because I think, honestly, those guys are going to ball out for whatever team they end up with, whether it's us or another team next year. The 2024 season will be the time that they're playing, so you won't get that comp pick until the 2025 draft, and I think it will be a 3rd round comp pick. I mean, you never know. It could end up being a 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th, but I really do truly believe it will be a 3rd rounder. I believe in those guys that much. So that's just a really interesting situation. I don't know what this random source, this random NFC personnel executive is talking about, because again, that completely contradicts everything Josina Anderson just said. I mean, even just the part about nobody's going to be willing to trade for them and sign them to long-term deals. That's literally what Josina Anderson just said multiple teams are willing to do. So I don't know the validity behind that, or maybe that's a true source and that NFC personnel executive is just tripping and he doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't know. So that's really the basis. I think this is a good time to explain that with this video breakdown. A lot of this is just me telling you everything I'm seeing, and I'm giving my thoughts and opinions. Nothing is just pure factual. I'm just trying to give you all of the scenarios. I just want this to be a thought-provoking video, a debate-provoking video that we can get into the comment section and talk about. Most notably, this the survey question that we're going to ask at the end, this debate question we're going to ask at the end. And I'm going to give you all the results to the Grant Paulson question so far. Since I think it's been like maybe 24 hours since he tweeted it. He tweeted it earlier he did this at 2 p.m. My fault. We still got 18 hours left in the survey, but yeah, we'll get there when we get there. Shouts out to Chris Cooley as well, because he brought up a great point. Just a reminder that the Rams offered 2 firsts and a 2nd rounder for Brian Burns, reportedly. I mean, that's not what the trade ended up being, but that was reportedly offered for him. I agree with Chris Cooley. I don't think we'll get close to that for Montez Sweat or Chase Young, but teams do overpay for players at the trade deadline. I've been saying this for years. If you're trying to trade away a veteran player and get the most value in return as far as draft picks or whatever, the best time to do it is before the trade deadline, mid to late October, or sometime maybe like during the draft. The draft may be like second place during the draft, leading up to the draft, all of that type of stuff. Or third place, maybe like training camp at a point where people are starting to stack injuries. They're getting desperate. They need a replacement for the guy that's probably got hurt in training camp practice out for season. Other than that, man, it literally the best time is now. If you want to get the most value, if you plan on trading Chase Young and Montez Sweat, and again, I've already given my opinion, I'm holding on to this unrealistic hope that we somehow keep both long term. But beyond my just delusional reality, if you're going to end up trading one of these guys, because I hope you trade them or re-sign them, don't just let them walk in free agency and get nothing in return. Again, at worst you get a third round pick, but you can use that in negotiations. Like if we just let him walk, we're gonna at the minimum get a third round comp pick, so you need to give us a real third round pick or higher if you want them. And maybe teams start outbidding each other, maybe the picks goes higher. But either way, you need to trade them away or re-sign them long term, in my opinion. A comp pick, third round comp pick is cool, but that's not great. You spent first round picks on them. Montez Sweat, you packaged together 2 second rounders to move up into the late first round to get them. That's why Ron Rivera didn't have a second round pick as soon as he got here. But with the history of our second round picks, would it even matter? Honestly, I mean, I know I'm going on a lot of tangents, but it's so random. But either way, man, I don't think we'll get that high. I don't think it will be 2 firsts and a second. But again, this trade deadline is the best time to trade away guys like that. Trade them away to a potential Super Bowl contender. This is the best time. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm willing to bet that the team that sent the actual trade offer, again, there's multiple teams interested, but only one team sent an official trade offer to the Commanders, of which the Commanders clearly declined because Montez Sweat is still currently on the team. I'm willing to bet the team that sent that trade offer is a Super Bowl contender, or at the very least a playoff contender, a really good team that feels like they're a Montez Sweat away from being a true serious football team. They're probably just Montez Sweat away from, hey man, we can really run the table. You know what I'm saying? That's why veteran trade value is at its highest right now, because you have a better snapshot of what your season is looking like. You don't know during the draft or even during training camp like how your team is gonna look, but by this time we're already 7 games into the season. You're looking around like, hey man, if we could just get that Montez Sweat guy from the Commanders, we might really be tough. You know what I'm saying? It's like that. It's hard to really predict that and see the true value of a Montez Sweat if you're another team during the draft process, leading up to the draft process. These other times where trade value is relatively high. Again, a veteran trade value is the highest late October because we're already 7 games in. I mean, because you don't want to be, you think you're a Super Bowl contender, and then you get into the season, players get hurt, and then now you've traded for Montez Sweat too early. You brought him to your team, and you're not even going anywhere because now you're starting quarterback or you're starting left tackle. All of these guys are hurt. You're losing more games than you expected to lose. Now 7 games into the season, again, you have a better feel of what's going on. You're like, okay, we're doing well. We look like we're playoff contenders. Montez Sweat is that guy that can take us over the top. I'm telling you, whatever team sent that trade offer is definitely a team that feels like they're just a Montez Sweat away from getting busy. Unless they just completely shortchanged them. Unless the trade offer was like a 6th round pick, then throw out everything I just said the past couple of minutes. But I'm willing to bet that if you're looking at the NFL standings, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the Eagles at this point because they just have the best front office in NFL history. It seems like they could just get whoever they want. I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe it's the Detroit Lions trying to pair him with Aiden Hutchinson or something like that. The Chiefs defense is balling, but I wouldn't be, hey, go ahead and add Montez Sweat to that. See how ridiculous they get. Wouldn't be surprised if it's the Dolphins trying to pair him with Bradley Chubb. Maybe the 49ers. I mean, their defensive line is already ridiculous, but you never know. The Ravens, Jaguars, even though my boy Trayvon Walker, #1 overall pick, Georgia in the building, you know what I'm saying, over there already, and they have a lot of great linebackers. Their front 7 is ridiculous, but you never, add Montez Sweat, you get even more athletic, faster, stronger, all of that type of stuff. Maybe the Steelers, Seahawks, a lot of these contenders, I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of them. I highly doubt it's a team that's rebuilding trying to get Montez Sweat. I highly doubt it's the Panthers, the Cardinals, Broncos, Patriots, Bears, either of those teams. I highly highly doubt it. I'm pretty sure it's one of those contenders because, again, contenders are willing to pay more for a veteran player like a Montez Sweat or a Chase Young right now than they would be any other time during the season. And then let's move on. Now let's start to get to the debate about who we should keep. And I don't want to pin these guys against each other because they are brothers, but it does kind of feel like they're fighting for the same one contract. We'll probably keep one, probably end up letting the other one walk in free agency or trade them away or whatever. But you never know. Maybe we keep both. Maybe we trade both. Maybe we let both walk away. Who knows at all? But as of right now, just to compare stats, right now, just versus the New York Giants alone, Chase Young led the team in pressures with 4, but Montez Sweat was second with 3. Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen each had 2. And Khalid Hudson actually had 3 at linebacker, which is interesting, tied with Montez Sweat. But again, Chase Young had the most pressures against the Giants. He had the best game, period. If you're looking at the best pass rushers in Week 7, Pro Football Focus graded the highest pass rushing grade. Week 7, you had to have a minimum of 20 pass rushing snaps, though. It was Myles Garrett, number 1, 95.5. He put the Browns on his back. I'm hoping that Chase Young can become that player, but who knows? Myles Garrett is ridiculous. Maybe Chase Young never becomes that great, but hopefully, he just keeps getting better and better. He's having a great season, but is he Myles Garrett? No. But you can argue that nobody in the NFL right now is. Josh Allen from the Jaguars, again, they got, Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen, they got some dogs over there, man. Maybe they would just want to add Montez Sweat to the rotation, but I doubt it. They already have a bunch of dogs. 89.1 grade. Dexter Lawrence, 87.7. And then Chase Young is 4th with an 87.5, with Chris Jones close behind him with an 87.2 from the Chiefs. So Chase Young was the 4th best pass rusher, according to Pro Football Focus, this past week against the Giants. Montez Sweat was not in that top 5. Also, in 6 games, Chase Young now has 35 pressures, 6 sacks, 20.4% pass rush win rate, and 82.2 pass rush grade. So if you're trying to figure out who's the problem on this team and why we're losing so many games, just know that Chase Young is not one of them. Also, per ESPN analytics, Chase Young is 11th in pass rush win rate out of the entire NFL. So out of all edge rushers in the NFL, 32 teams, every team typically has 2 or more pass rushes that they covet. So really, out of 64 of the top starting pass rushers in the NFL, Chase Young is 11th in pass rush win rate. But what's crazy is that somehow, even after missing week 1, he's in the top 20 and he's had the most snaps out of everybody in the top 20. Like, you would think, because this is a percentage thing, this is an advanced analytics thing, this is a pass rush win rate, basically an average of every time you rush the passer, how often do you win? And the fact that he's had the most snaps out of everybody in the top 20, again, he's 11th, and he missed week 1, is actually the top 15, my fault, because Max Crosby of the Raiders has more than him as well. But outside of Max Crosby, he has the most out of everybody else in the top 20. And again, this is a pass rush win rate, not the most pass rush wins total. This is who wins the most on a per snap basis. And the fact that he's played the most, actually, if anything, hurts those statistics. If he played less, it would actually increase the chances of his pass rush win rate being higher. So that's very incredible that even though he missed week 1, he still has the most pass rush snaps, plays, I guess, according to ESPN. Out of the top 20 outside of Max Crosby for the Raiders, and he's still 11th on the list. If he would play less, like if he sat more and he was fresher, he would come out more fresh instead of playing some snaps where he's tired and he's not giving it his all because he's tired. Other guys are taking more breaks. You have Myles Garrett that technically only has 78 pass rushes. Chase Young has 134, almost double to him. So, of course, Myles Garrett he's fresher, he's less tired, he's less fatigued, he's less beat up. And so when he does rush the passer, he's closer to 100%, ready to actually rush the passer at his best capability. Chase Young is out there still dominating while tired. So I just want to go ahead and put that out there. I know that was a long breakdown. I know it was really wordy, but I'm just trying to get it through y'all heads that Chase Young has been an elite pass rusher this year, even though the stats don't necessarily say it with the sacks, but still. Moving on to Commanders season sack totals, Sweat is on pace for a career best 13 right now with 5.5, and Young is actually 2.5 sacks away from tying his career high, and we still have a lot of games left. Now, according to Grant Paulson, Chase Young has 5 sacks, but according to Chris Cooley, he's credited with 6. So I don't exactly know what's going on, but technically, Montez Sweat is kind of leading the team with 5.5 sacks. Chase Young is 5. Jonathan Allen has 3. Case 2 has 3, with 2 of them coming against the Falcons, and Jamin Davis has 2. Those are our top 5 sack leaders on the team right now. So it's like advanced stats, Chase Young, surface stats, Montez Sweat. Let's also look at pass rush win rate at edge so far 2023. Chase Young has 24%. Montez Sweat only has 8%. Montez Sweat only wins 8% of the times that he's rushing the passer, he beats the guy in front of him. Chase Young is doing it at 24%, 3 times as much. So every one time that Montez Sweat beats an offensive lineman, Chase Young has done it 3 times. That's crazy. Sweat is 27, and Chase Young is also 24. So Seth Walder brings up a good point. If the Commanders are trading one and re-signing the other, I'd prefer to deal Sweat and keep Chase Young. That's a great point right there. Chase Young is younger, and he's far more efficient, 3 times more efficient. That's crazy. But at the same time, moving on from the stats, I'm confused about what Washington is doing overall because, first of all, one AFC executive believes the Commanders would at least listen to trade offers for pass rushers Chase Young and Montez Sweat. However, betting odds on one or both being dealt should not be great, sources told AJ Fowler. Washington, as of now, very much sees both in its future. Their strength is in the D-line. So apparently the Commanders see both of them. Hopefully they're probably like me right now with no logic, no real plan, because again, there's a report that they haven't even tried to actually talk extension with these guys yet. Maybe they're just trying to focus on the season at hand. Maybe that's the excuse. But according to reports, the Commanders see both of them as defensive ends for this team moving into the future. I mean, it's probably honestly more likely that Chase Young and Montez Sweat stay and are playing for us next year than Ron Rivera's coaching for us next year, especially at this rate. We'll see how it goes. But shouts out to my boy Washington today on Twitter. He said, translation, it has to be a big trade offer for Washington to move either player. I don't see Washington being buyers or sellers at the deadline. Honestly, probably just going to stay put. Wouldn't mind them trading for an offensive lineman though, and those are good points. But basically, the reason I'm confused is because, again, the next article is saying, this is from The Athletic, that the Commanders have not had extension negotiations with Chase Young or Montez Sweat yet. I don't know what's going on. But other front office executives around the NFL do believe that the Commanders will be sellers before this trade deadline. But it's so contradictory. Are you going to buy or are you going to sell? Don't do this middle of just playing it day by day and then you end up not doing well either way. Either you need to embrace the rebuild and like truly build for the future so we can become great sooner, or you embrace this season and you dive deep into it and you try to extend these guys and you're like, we're here to win now. But this little middle that we keep doing, this perpetual average that we keep being, I can't deal with it no more, man. I just can't. And shouts out to my boy Mason Kinahan again, because he brings up a great point. It doesn't make any sense for Ron Rivera to even trade away Chase Young or Montez Sweat before the trade deadline, especially after the loss. Rivera's seat is hotter than ever. Why would he want to build up extra picks for the upcoming draft for another front office and coach that he won't be here to coach for? That's a good point too. This is a very interesting situation. Also, shouts out my boy Commanders Realm on Twitter as well. He brought up a great point that I agree with. Hypothetically, would you trade Young and or Sweat right now for, say, let's say a second rounder, or keep them, let the next regime decide if they want to re-sign or not, and worst case end up with a 3rd round comp pick if they decide not to? Point being, is jumping ship right now for a little more comp worth not letting the next group have the luxury of making that decision themselves? Obviously, if it's a 1st rounder offer right now, is different, but I think that's unlikely, and that's also a good point. So there's a lot of factors playing into this. Is Ron Rivera willing to basically trade these guys and basically admit, yeah, I'm out of here? I'm trading away some of my best players for draft picks for a team that I won't even be here to coach for. How do you even ask him to do that? And at the same time, if you were to trade these guys early, what if like the next coach that comes in here, say, just for example, if Ron Rivera is fired, the next GM, if Martin Mayhew is fired, comes in, is like, man, I actually would have preferred if y'all kept Montez Sweat and Chase Young for us, and then either we could have traded them for more value than y'all did, or actually we just want to keep them. Maybe the next head coach comes in and wants to keep Chase Young and Montez Sweat. You never know. So I just hope we don't pull the gun too early on anything, unless it's like sincere value and y'all like, again, you're embracing the tank at that point. If you trade Montez Sweat or Chase Young, I hope it's for good value, and at that point you're assuming Ron Rivera's fired, you're assuming everybody's up out of here, maybe except for Eric Bieniemy by himself, maybe Jack Del Rio. You never know. But Martin Mayhew and all of those guys in the front office are gone. They're cleaning house, and we're in seller mode. Kendall Fuller's probably gone. Cameron Curl may even be gone. Curtis Samuel Antonio Gibson, you never know. Any of those guys may be gone. Charles Leno may be gone. You never know. And then lastly, before we get up out of here, again, Grant Paulson, shouts out to him for starting this Twitter survey. He asked the question: if the Commanders decided to keep and extend one of their 2 defensive ends, which should they keep and pay long term? 46% said Montez Sweat, 54% said Chase Young. Now, there's still 17 hours left. There's almost 3,000 votes, 2,938 votes so far. But so far, more people prefer to keep Chase Young than Montez Sweat. But at the end of the day, it is neck and neck. So that's the end of this video. Please stiff arm the like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated videos just like this one. Definitely make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, all of that. And if you want to support the channel for all of the work that I put in, the research, the time, the effort, if you want to support the channel, because again, YouTube is tripping right now, if you want to donate, you can donate to $RicoScores, that's the Cash App, or you can donate to the PayPal WilliamHC94@gmail.com. All of that information is in every description of every video, every live stream, all of that, including this one right here. Now, of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. And most importantly, I want to get a feel for how everybody feels in my comment section. Would you prefer to keep Chase Young or Montez Sweat long term if you had to pick between the 2? I also want to hear why. And then, of course, also just let me know how you feel about everything else discussed in this video as well. And I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm out.